Hey guys, it's Summer Rayne from Homestead, Brooklyn, and I'm here in Oyster Bay, Long Island at the Planting Fields Arboretum. This is one of the most exquisite parks here in New York, and we are getting a behind-the-scenes tour at both their conservatories and the Arboretum. So welcome to this week's episode of Plant One On Me, Field Trip Edition.
So this is one of many wings of the greenhouses. So now we'll be heading into the Houseplant House. And a lot of people have interesting, stories about houseplants and how they take care of their houseplants. And so we have a nice display of houseplants too that you can see. So our Houseplant House has got a lot of different crotons and snake plants and ivy, of course.
Peperomia are my
Peperomia,
favorite.
yeah. Peperomia do really well for us. They do very well. They're very forgiving houseplants, actually.
They really are. I mean, a lot of people struggle with them, but there's so many different varieties, and some are a little bit more succulent, and Peleonias. I have some of this growing in my vivarium.
Yep. This is a peperomia with very fine foliage. Isn't that nice? Tradescantia. Yep.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yep.
This is a Euphorbia millii, I believe.
Thorns,
yeah.
And that does extremely well for us, as you can see. We love things in the African violet family. The streptocarpus and things like that are really nice.
I've been seeing more of the jungle cactus, Ripsalis, epiphyllums starting to make the houseplant market a little bit more.
Yeah, they are. We
have some Aschenanthus and lipstick plants here, but not in bloom. This one's a Columbia, beautiful foliage.
And even Clerodendron there with the interesting fragrant flowers, tropical one.
This is the first time I had seen this Medinea here. I had seen this here, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is one of the most beautiful Medineas I'd ever seen. And as I saw it here last year, I ended up getting one for
It's not a very popular plant. It's not easy to find. But
no, it's also not always easy to grow. It's a little bit more of a terrarium plant, I found.
Absolutely.
What's interesting though is like this Medinea is much thicker leaved than the one that I have. I'm not quite sure if it's a slightly different cultivar or if it's just like older, so.
Probably a different cultivar, yeah. But, so this is really a foliage house. And then one of the newer developments at Planting Fields is this house. Even though this wing has been here for a long time, we just renovated, the greenhouse staff renovated this house. This was a fern collection, and what we did is we renovated this to include, this is a collection of tropical rhododendrons. So you'll see a couple of blooms there on the rhododendrons. These are from Southeast Asia and Thailand and places like that. We received this or purchased this collection from a nursery in Hawaii. And these are epiphytic rhododendrons. So they'll grow in trees or they'll grow in bark basically, and they're mostly epiphytic. So, and even though their bloom time is pretty much past now, they're really March, April bloomers. Yeah. There's still a few in bloom that are really nice, and this is a perfect condition for them.
So you're kind of growing them in like this barky mixture.
Exactly.
Okay.
But there's some that'll be growing in trees, and you can kind of see a few here that we lift up, and they really are quite.
Yeah, when I think of rhododendrons, I don't think of epiphytes, but that's phenomenal. So where are most of these coming from around the world?
Again, Southeast Asia, Thailand.
Okay.
I was inspired by these. First of all, we have a large rhododendron collection on the grounds, but I went to New Zealand in 2001 and saw, these are called Varroa rhododendrons, and they are tropical. And once I saw them, I said, we got to have them at Planting Fields. So I spoke to our greenhouse manager, and we eventually acquired a collection. So we have a really nice 30 or 40 species and hybrids here.
Wow.
So. But you can kind of see that some of them are finished blooming now, and some of them are still in bloom. And there are some actually growing in some of those old trees that we have in here. And we mixed in ferns, too.
So you didn't get rid of the ferns completely?
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
No, we didn't.
Do you ever host, when you're switching out plants, I'm always curious, do you ever host sales of them afterwards, or do you just kind of like have to compost them?
We have a composting program here, but we try to recycle as much as we can, and sometimes we'll take the plants and use them in other displays, or we'll propagate them, or we'll give them again to other gardens and things like that. So we try to use everything to its fullest as much as possible.
And do you have like your own little planting stations here and your propagation stations?
Yes.
Those are like greenhouses that are separate from these.
Yeah, absolutely.
Phenomenal. Great.
So we'll move on.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's do it.
So this is the start of our orchid collection. We have over 2,500 orchids here from all over the world. And while again, this is not really orchid season is pretty much in March. You know, it's a great place to come throughout the year. And we have a lot of orchid collectors that come here, will photograph, or will actually, again, donate plants and that kind of thing. So orchids are they're a passion for people who love orchids. And we have a nice collection here.
Some say an obsession.
Some will say that, yes. Some will say that. And we do have an orchid festival that goes on here, so it's kind of appropriate to see that. Again, these are display orchids, so we will move them in different areas for displays. But the majority of them stay in place.
And it's not just all Phalaenopsis.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's a lot of different types, yeah.
And is this more of a species, or are there also like cultivars?
A lot of
hybrids
cultivars.
here?
And one of the most hybridized plants in the world are orchids. And there are new genera starting all the time, and so we have a lot of really unusual things. So.
Are there any specific ones that you'd like to point out? Oh, look at the bumblebee on that one.
Yep, he looks like he's pretty intoxicated, doesn't he?
Yeah. Just making a comment that the first bee got put on the endangered species list, actually. Yeah.
I saw that. Our pollinators are in peril, unfortunately.
Real peril, yeah.
So this is Phalaenopsis, and they're mainly in full bloom in March. So they're pretty much done now, but the display they give is just amazing. So every color and shape and size you can imagine. So, and I think Phalaenopsis are pretty easy for the homeowner, for the home gardener to grow. So they're a little more forgiving, I think, than other orchids.
I think that's the first entry point for orchids, because you see them in supermarkets, especially the Phalaenopsis and supermarkets. But I guess you have lady slippers. You get little things that you could just
show you the lady slipper orchids. They're pretty amazing.
Great. Yeah.
So let's go take a look at them. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah. Well, when you don't have a greenhouse in your back, you have to figure out which variety. You got to figure out which variety is going to be good for you.
So there's a Cattleya that really.
The Cattleyas are real.
They are spectacular.
Showstoppers.
Yep. They really are nice.
And it is definitely one of these that are redolent, because I smell the flowers, something in bloom here.
So this, first a couple of things. This is the vanilla plant, which is an orchid, which is, a lot of people don't realize that it is an orchid. I haven't seen any vanilla beans on it, but that is representative of the vanilla plant. These are our lady slippers, which are very beautiful and very unusual and very valuable.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the other thing about planting fields is we have a collection of hardy lady slipper orchids outside. We have both pink and white, and they are beautiful.
Are there what are some of the native orchid species that are around here? Do we have any?
The pink lady slipper, I'm not exactly sure of the species, but we have the pink lady slipper, and then the white version of that is very rare. You rarely see that, but we do have a little section on the grounds. And what people don't realize is you can't transplant them. They have to stay where they're growing. If you try to transplant them into your garden, they won't survive.
Is it because they've brokered some kind of deals with the bacteria and the fungi and down? Yeah, the mycorrhizae down.
The pH has to be perfect, and the light has to be perfect, and the moisture has to be perfect. So there have been people who've tried to transplant them, and it just doesn't work.
I mean, I think that we've learned so much over kind of with our ecosystems. I mean, I remember that years ago there was a program where it's like, yes, you could destroy the wetland if you can move it elsewhere, and so many of the wetlands would fail, and it's because of all of that mycorrhizae and all of that kind of interactions underground that we're missing.
Completely shifting gears. So from a totally different perspective, this is the Cacti and Succulent room, and it's very different, of course. Some people love them, and some people just not their cup of tea. But we have some very old things in here, like very old agaves and golden barrel cactus, and Even some of the things in pots have been here for a long time. So this is guest area, ox tongue.
Yeah.
And again, some of these are very old. Some of them are fairly new. Aloes, haworthias, things of that nature. So there's quite a few representatives, if you will.
Do you propagate these by seed at all, ever, or is it
Mostly
just
from divisions
division?
and cuttings? Yeah. If it's something really unusual, we might do it from seed, but it's
Yeah.
mostly divisions.
This one looked like it had just flowered too.
Yep. And of course, a nice representative of aloes, which people can relate to.
See some of the crassulas coming up.
Crassulas,
as well.
yep. Definitely jades are pretty popular. And of course, as my favorite plant, lithops, the living stone, I think that's just such a cool plant. It has such an interesting history and ecological value and things like that.
It really does. I mean,
Literally looks like living stones.
It absolutely does. And I actually just got a shipment in, and they have the windows on the top are just like of so many different beautiful colors. I don't know if it's a species or if actually they're hybridized, but
I think they are hybridized.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
But they're really, it is interesting just from the photosynthetic structures on the inside and how it pulls in light and doesn't want too much light or too little light. It's phenomenal at these plants.
They're a little more finicky than the average succulent. They are a little more finicky.
Yeah, I've definitely killed my fair share of lithops too, yeah.
And of course, things that look like they're dead, but they're actually dormant. And people will ask why is that still here if it's dead, and it's not dead. It's, cacti and succulents have to go dormant at some point in their lives in order to survive.
Yeah,
harsh environments.
Sometimes it's like some of my succulents will go through a summer dormancy, and then some of them will go through a winter dormancy.
Exactly.
I always tell people just to kind of give them a little like tug or scrape your fingernail on them to see if they still have turgor, and and in most cases they do. And my Dioscorea doesn't have leaves on it now either. It's just like it looks like a big wooden bump.
Right. That's exactly what it looks like. And of course, our golden barrel cactus are quite old and looking good.
Really looking good, and almost I want to pet it a little bit, but
be careful.
you got to be careful.
And of course, the agaves are spectacular.
And how old are these? Because you had mentioned these before.
They've been here way longer than I have, so I would think 30 or 40 years is not out of the realm of possibility.
When do you think it would flower?
I would suspect late summer, fall.
But do these flower once and then they're done, or?
Most of them, a lot of them do, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as they call them, century plants, where they bloom once and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think the ponytail palm does the same thing.
Fascinating. I had no idea.
Okay, well, now you've seen planting fields.
This is phenomenal. Thank you so much. And this is just like what I wanted. It's like a lot of the viewers actually love taking a look at the conservatories because, a lot of the plants that you have in here can be things that can be grown in homes as well. So always good to get a behind the scenes tour. So I very much thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey guys, so I hope you really enjoyed that tour. I mean, I have to thank Mike and Vinny for actually taking us around and seeing some of those beautiful plants and sharing in the history of the planting fields. So if you like these episodes, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to be notified when the next episode hits, then you hit the little alarm button nearby. And of course, if you'd like to follow along on my journey, you could do so on my blog at homesteadbrooklyn.com and on Instagram at homesteadbrooklyn. See you next week.